and Patrick is on his way. He's stuck in LA in torrential rain. He should be here in 30 to 40 minutes or so, but we'll kick it off without him. Welcome to the show, guys.
Yo,
Thank
happy
you so
to be
much,
here.
Nicholas. Yeah.
I've been looking forward to this for weeks. We had like a false start a while ago when my computer broke down. Luckily, I got that fixed. This is a crypto art panel discussion, and I'm planning to doing more. And you guys are, of course, welcome to come back on anytime. And the idea behind it is basically to sort of kick the idea of crypto art around and see what we can come up with, and also to show, of course, some examples of it. And you guys are, of course, prime examples of beautiful crypto art within the space. But yeah, to kick it off, what does crypto art mean for you? Or maybe we should start at the beginning. What does art mean for you?
You want to take it first?
I'm. So, do you want? I could go if you
Any
want.
of you?
We're gonna do the whole. No, please you. No, please you. Go for it, man. I'll go second.
All right, cool. I maybe prefer to start with crypto art because that's not an easy task, but it's an easier task than to say what art is. That's a so maybe, well, when I came in, that was 2017 June, I think, and I had a background in understanding what the monetary system was and how money was created and all that kind of stuff. And even though I still keep learning new things, like the Pareto distribution and how the monks were involved and all that kind of stuff that I didn't know for a while, I was a little bit of a money activist and an entrepreneur and an artist for quite some time. And because this journey started for me in about 2006 when I saw some documentaries about the monetary system. And then I became a digital artist about 15 years ago because the way that I put my art together resulted into high resolution digital files. And then that was quite complicated to adjust into the legacy, quote unquote, art world, because they felt like I was just selling copies and not the oil original, so to speak. So by the time that I then learned what Bitcoin was in 2017, I realized that there was no real substantial art that I felt was as dignified as the invention of the thing itself and the movement itself. And I thought that it deserved art. And that time I was aware of some artists, of course, who were doing it elsewhere, but I just didn't know. But I just never came across anything like it, and started spontaneously making some. And turns out there weren't too many artists anywhere who were making art for and about the cryptocurrency space, as I then kind of titled it, and I registered artforcrypto.com and started telling the story of why was Bitcoin important. Well, I was turning some ideas and concepts from Andreas Antonopoulos and some podcast hosts and people into artworks, and then utilizing the technology to verify it, like VeriSart I was using to put it on the Bitcoin chain to send certificates. And that then evolved in 2018 into NFTs when Super Rare came along and things of that nature. And so to me personally, what crypto art was art that was in support and
You're falling away a little bit, Vesa.
direct.
There you are. Vesa.
Okay. Sorry.
We have a kind of glitch. Vesa, can you hear me?
Oh, man.
I'm gonna type it.
Vesa's just like spitting gold, and it's
Yeah,
in bits and pieces.
Sign back in.
Oh man, we'll get there.
Yeah, I think.
Oh shit. Okay.
I think we had a similar problem, or at least Pigeon had a similar problem yesterday. It's probably the connection of VESA, because everything over here looks okay. But yeah, we are in the middle of a very exciting story about how VESA got involved with.
I liked it. It's a shame. I mean, I can.
Hello.
Yo. Okay.
Yo.
You sound
Apologies for that.
clear. Yes.
Okay. Was it better? Oh,
We sort of
okay.
lost the last 2 minutes.
Oh boy. Can you tell me where I started dropping off around approximately? Can you remember at all?
Talking about Bitcoin and its potential and the movement, the art movement around Bitcoin and Ethereum, I think, because you were just like, I was just getting the download as it came.
Oh,
Your
okay.
entry into that as a way to share art coming from studying how money works, right? Studying.
Sure. My apologies to you and everyone listening, because I'm going to go back a little bit. I'll try and rekindle it a bit. So essentially, it was wonderful to understand what Bitcoin was, because it was a positive direction towards money, as opposed to something only to be critiqued as the fractional lending system. And I saw it from one side very heavily at that one point in time, and how much freedom it brought to the whole thing. And it was genuinely inspiring. And I was turning some of the concepts of Andres Antonopoulos into art, utilizing the technology, verifying it on the Bitcoin blockchain, and starting to discover slowly but surely a community who is doing the same, of like-minded individuals. And all of a sudden I wasn't alone anymore, as I had been on many levels as a visual artist up until then, doing the digital stuff, as well as then starting to do the crypto art stuff. And it led to NFTs in 2018, when Super Rare came along and some other players and more artists started coming along. But what I really started to, again, I'm seeing just this thing that there might be a connection. I hope I'm not dropping off again. But so I had about 300 digital originals by that time. So I had needed the innovation of NFTs and Bitcoin for maybe a decade before they became a thing. So this is why I was a little bit early to the game, and quite bought in, I suppose, from multiple different angles, and why I thought it was important to kind of become a part of it, and felt privileged to be among the first sort of wave of people. I think Robness was a year before me, and Crypto Graffiti, I think he was before me, and Coin Artist. I don't quite know the order of how people really came along and who came in and did what, but especially those kind of recognizable people who, in my eyes, were doing exactly that they were supporting the movement itself with their art and then utilizing the technologies. So for me, crypto art never was only minting something on the block, a little bit of a bastardization of it, and it became the MTV 3.0. I suppose that led to the crypto a little bit after. So, but in many people's minds, they see crypto kitties as crypto art, and I think that's ridiculous. So that's a little bit, I suppose, the definition of that, and I'll sign off with that.
Yeah, I think Stella Bell was also very one of those very early OGs, and definitely also Robness, yeah, and you, of course. But before we dive into that, Andre, what does it mean to you, or how would you define it?
You know, for me, it's very funny, because I only started diving in. I'm of the let's call it this. I don't know if you call it the second generation, because I'm of that cohort that came in 2021, not because there was money involved and not knowing any of the history, but because I had a friend that got very lucky, a very close friend and even mentor, Amanda Bertoni, who was on Super Rare, who I believe got onboarded in 2019. And, she's a painter. And so for me, I saw it as another channel to share my work. And if it worked out, cool. If it didn't work out, cool. The community just seemed very interesting to me. There was no holds barred from an art perspective. I learned about CryptoKitties after I truly came in, like in the summer of that 2021, and I was like, I'm going to learn a little bit more of the history of this place, because there's clearly an anthropological, like cultural basis to what's happening here. And so I grabbed a bunch of books from various free websites. And it's very funny because in the histories, they go first into CryptoKitties, right? Because I was reading books, essentially little ebooks that were published quickly, and it was like, well, what is the history here? Is usually, I would imagine, just like whoever's coming in from whatever, and the loudest thing in the room was whatever was probably being marketed, right? I mean, maybe you can speak more to that, right? Like Vesa, but like it was interesting to me because I didn't really care about that. I just saw a lot of different forms of art, and I saw a place where, particularly on Super Rare, it felt like art was being taken very seriously, and there was also an opportunity for various forms of art that I love. So for me, collage, glitch, and figuration, right? There seemed to be an audience that also really appreciated both figurative painting and illustration, right? Like bande dessinée. And I was fascinated. I said, you know what, let's just give this a shot, because I had been a traditional artist since professionally since 2017, like full time and part time in between. And so there's this opportunity where I could skip the middleman, as it were, for me, from a market perspective, and potentially just cultivate a group of close friends, because that was how it had been sold to me, is that there is no one in the middle, no dealer, no gallerist, nobody in your way in terms of introducing yourself to an entire group of artists and collectors. And so for me, that was how I came in looking at it. So for me, it is a different, maybe not as much as a philosophical or like a foundation re-examination of like how money and culture is like introducing and reintroducing itself to each other. But I found it, the whole space just seemed so liberating to me. That was what it was to me then. I didn't care as much because the ecosystem had already been established, right? So you already had the strange carousels of like DeFi and PFPs and just a very strange thing. But I knew it was like there's a very concentrated Jupiter's diamond of art and art lovers here, and I need to be in that now.
That is very much alive. That's also what attracted me. And you could, of course, do a very sort of boring analysis to say crypto art is NFTs, it is peer-to-peer, it is cutting out the middleman, sort of the technical side of what NFTs basically are, not per se what crypto art is. But I'm actually more interested in the concept, like what you guys are doing and or trying to do. And I think also what you're doing is also very interesting, Andre, because you're, like you said, you're more of a traditional artist, but you are attracted to crypto art, or at least the space as a whole anyway, right? So even though you're a traditional artist with qua background, you're still contributing to this new sort of dynamic ecosystem that is sort of created around it. And of course, Vesa being more of an OG in that sense, he's been around, but his whole art is sort of infused with the ideas of Bitcoin and crypto. So it's that's also why I wanted both of you on it, and also Patrick. Of course, he has another angle, being a glitch artist, which is perhaps, well, he will be able to explain that. But so when you, the two of you, when you sort of look at the technical side behind NFTs and you compare it to crypto art as an art concept, do you think that sort of enhances the concept, or do you think it has nothing to do with crypto art at all? Or, how do those two things relate to each other, like the technical side of NFTs and that whole, you could say NFT art movement and crypto art? Are they the same thing? Is the one part of the other, or are they separate? Or
Well, if you don't mind, Andre, I could have a small take at it.
Roll through.
So I think what
I'm gonna ask Vesa to sign back in again.
I had a little boy.
Yeah, it is the connection. It is Maybe it's also raining at Vesa's end. I'm not sure. Sometimes that can sort of throw off the connection.
The ghost in the machine.
Or the ghost is maybe this isn't allowed to happen, right? You know,
I like it. There's emphasis. But I love hearing what Vesa has to say. Like it's like sitting by a fire with a skilled and veteran warrior. You're going like, this is what I experienced, and I'm like, okay.
It's good again, Vesa.
Sorry about that. I had some issues yesterday in the stream, and I thought it was because of my Wi-Fi. So this time, trying to prevent this kind of thing, I actually joined with my phone 5G network, as this has always worked well before, but now it seems to be failing me. So apologies again. So do you mind if I kind of recap again?
No problem.
Okay, so what I found a little bit challenging, and what has been the challenge of the space altogether, especially at the beginning days, is that even though it was vibrant and exciting and liberating and fresh and all that kind of stuff, a lot of the people who were the early collectors and the early OGs, in many ways, they didn't really have much of an art background. So there was a sense in some things that were like very rudimentary were hailed as masterpieces, and some things were done like, let's say, the 100th iteration of something that you would have already seen in the art world done before was already kind of then all of a sudden hailed as a new kind of like, oh, this is fantastic, and it's like the 100th rehashing of something if you had the background. And I think I got a little bit of an people thought that I was maybe a little bit difficult in the early days, because I kind of said that to me it was just so important that this technology came about, and that this new movement, what it stood for and what kind of power it gave to the artists and whatever. And some of the very early important stuff went to dead ears, and it still keeps going a little bit to just people not speaking the language of art. And it's not a failure, I would say, of the space itself. It's you could broaden it to the global arts education system and large, of why it is that we have a population who speaks pop culture very, very fluently, but not necessarily the language of the modern masters, or even going all the way back in time. And that was a little bit the shame, that I thought that now all of a sudden, because we would have had the dominance of the modern masters and the Picassos and the whatever, the like, for the longest time, when we had this breakage in lineage and we had this exciting new technology and an exciting language, then all of a sudden what was hailed as masterpieces were essentially rehashings of someone else's paintings with a Bitcoin logo, and they were making all the bucks, and some of the original stuff was being totally left without eyeballs, and it was quite frustrating, as you might imagine. So to me, it has always been about, and why I really enjoy being on this podcast with Andre, because it's always been about mastery for me. It's always when someone has that kind of soul, you have an original voice and you have a contribution. That's something, when I see the art itself, it touches me, and I go like, wow. Much the same as I had with Luca Delgado, with the show that we had over here. I just go like, I have a piece of me that rests inside of that painting when I see it, and I feel calm and revitalized when I look at that piece of work. And that's the true north, is that, does this person have a voice that contributes with their art something to the human experience that wasn't here before they arrived here? That's the thing. And then to utilize the technology, then to be able to distribute it from Finland to the international market, or London, or wherever you are, for now, especially from third world countries. You can have African art with an internet connection all of a sudden be freely, and you don't have to have any of the gatekeepers. But the double-edged sword that has is that you don't have any gatekeepers. And some of those gatekeepers, even though this space likes to paint them as bad quite often, are there for the best of purposes, and they're actually there to try and find who are the ones who've done a significant contribution, who have significant voices, and help people to try and understand why it is that their contribution is significant and why it would enrich in their lives, as opposed to just then become an ego circle jerk, which it often becomes if you don't have any middle people. So this is the balance that I'm hoping that this whole thing strikes, is that the hierarchies that form, which they always form with human beings, that they would be quite healthy. They never are, but to a degree. And then it would have that any of the old hierarchies would be dismantled enough in order to new life to be breathed into it. So that's what I've been trying to dance all these years in order to kind of be in this space. And it's still a challenge, but it's much easier now.
So you raised a lot of stuff there.
It's gonna be such a good conversation, man. This is so good. Fuck. Okay.
So do you want to respond?
Dude, I just want to have the conversation because it's just so good. It's like this, you get me, bro. It's the challenge of the challenge of the romantic, right? It's like, we know the lineage. We have our own lineages, but we also have a view into the broader lineage. And you're right. A lot of people, even now in the various back channels, you'll eventually have the one brave collector, because I think it is very brave of a lot of these collectors when they go, can somebody tell me where I need to learn about, like, where I can get a fine arts background, like a history, or like a history of the general space and who you guys are referencing? Because I think they are hungry for that also, right? It's like they are, but
that's a positive.
I'm sorry?
That's a positive, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely is positive. When people are hungry and they're vulnerable enough, and I think that this space does, while there is quite a bit of ego, some of it I think has dropped off in the recent years, right? With what do they like here? They love the finance terms, right? The bull and the bear, with the also, they're like, there is a certain humbling that is going on. And I think collectors that are still around, particularly the fine art collectors, some of them are curious. Some of them are even artists at heart, and they're trying to be artists. But there are the few that are brave, that are like, well, where do you guys learn about art? Because I just want to know. And I can imagine that, seeing it how you saw it, of just like all of this rampant speculation and influencer culture coming from, I would imagine, Instagram and probably Twitter and YouTube, that like, yeah, there was just this rush, and nobody cared to educate themselves on anything, and they were just like greedy. It's not greedy children, but it's like kids rampage around, right? It's like, I have nephews, and I've been a son, like, like they go nuts and they create their own lore. And I have patience for the people that are, I get when you're seeing something for the first time ever, and you're like, oh my god, this is everything. And in reality, it's like, it's true. It's everything for them right now, because they're seeing it for the first time. What I hope is that, like, for works like yours, mine, even Patrick, like, and so many of the real artists in the space, is that I feel like we come carrying those lineages with us, and we bring the mystery forward when the art is really, really good. And a lot of times the art can be really, really good. And when you find that little treasure that goes like, okay, I want to know how far your roots stretch back. Like, I need to know everything about everything. And when you find that artist, regardless of the medium, I think it's this crazy celebratory moment. No, like you're saying, it's like, it's huge. It's this huge thing. But how do you, sorry, my dog is begging for her dinner. Mama, you got to go away. Go on. Having high-minded, high-cultured conversations over here. Just give her that big smile. Yeah, so it's one of those things. I try to have as much patience as possible. I think the best part about the space, though, is what we're seeing now, where money, sales for the mass, I want to put it that way, have slowed down. For individuals, it seems like it's doing great, depending on who you're talking to and how you're talking. But I feel like collectors are now that they've been in the space for a couple of years and have hung out with artists and seen artists, we're seeing collectors that are using AI to start dipping their toes into the art world. And I think that they're starting to learn more and more as time goes on. So I don't know.
You mean using AI to educate themselves?
Using AI just to be like, I am an artist. Like, here I am. I'm an artist. I can create something. I have a collector who's a very good friend of mine named Luca, who is a poet at heart, and he started putting his poetry up, for next to nothing. And then he got his hands on some AI tech that would allow him to put his words on and then have them be the description for an image. And then the image is just moving, right? It's like the true draw is the poetry for him, but the AI allows for this expansion of his vision in a way that allows him to have a great amount of fun and a great amount of randomness. And I find that that's what I'm seeing now we're seeing in the cycle is like collectors are becoming artists.
So,
also, have you guys heard of 01 by any chance yet? Have you guys been hearing about that?
Nope.
You guys know about MoCA, right? Museum of Crypto Art.
Mm-hmm.
By any chance?
Yep.
So for those listening, not for you guys are initiated. MoCA, the Museum of Crypto Art, is run by the collector and curator Colborne Bell and his team, and it's one of the few nonprofits that exists in the space, which is great because that's where curatorial direction and education should come from, and has even in the physical world. And they created, in partnership with, I think it's Avalanche or I might be getting the company wrong, created a platform that the rules of the platform are, there's artwork up there, it's free. But the only way to get it is if you mint a piece of art. So if you mint a piece of art, you can collect 10 pieces from the artists that are on the platform. And there's some very interesting artists that are on there anonymously and some less anonymously, right? So we mentioned Rob Ness, right? Max Osiris is on there. There's a bunch of OGs that are going under assumed names to release work on there. And so if you mint a piece, you are able to collect 10 more pieces, right? You are also able to set a, I'm sorry if this is a huge tangent, but you're able to set their royalties when they open up their secondary market. It's not going to be open for a while yet. When you open up the secondary market, your royalties will be protected, and you can go 20% royalties is their base, but you can create your own contract on there that I believe goes up to 30% or more. And the whole idea being that, like, during this moment while the pool is open, you can really collect a lot of really crazy artists for essentially nothing. And eventually sell them for a lot, considering their provenance and the provenance that will grow from the system. It's super fucking cool, and I believe that it's meant to bring back those days, those OG days where you could get great artwork for next to nothing. So basically, I don't know if you've heard about this, but it's really, really fun. I've been using it and actually getting a whole education on. I've been educating myself on what I like now that I'm able to collect for free. To apologize about that tangent, it's just very fun.
No
and also their
No worries, cool stuff.
Their floor system is cool too that you pulled up here. I have one of those too. They're digital museums that they're selling.
Really cool. Yeah, I know them, but I haven't really dived into them. I should invite them on the show.
They're great. They're great. They're great to talk to. Just great people all around. Like I said, the non-for-profits are really the way forward in either sphere, physical and digital. I tend not to go as much to galleries. I like going to museums as much as possible.
And in that sense, you can say that sort of the technical side, what I mentioned earlier, it enabled this sort of creative explosion. It's sort of worldwide. Everybody can join. It eliminated a lot of obstacles, and with AI, even more obstacles. So you can probably not reduce crypto art to sort of the technical side of it, because then it would become kind of flat and nonsense, like both of you sort of mentioned. But it's sort of at the root of it, right? It sort of makes people aware of the economics involved. Crypto artists are also very well aware of how money works. There's this really nice piece in FOMA IDs that I got from Sasha Bailey, who from Tom Badley, and Tom Badley had this essay at the back, and he sort of makes the point that old artists or artists in the past, they were sort of influenced by social forces without having any control over it, really. and and they had this sort of love-hate relationship with money, of course, because they sort of detested money on the one hand, but they were also, of course, very much dependent on it because of finance. Well, crypto artists are, of course, steeped in the lore of money, where money comes from, how it works. I mean, you're basically partly also your own salesman or saleswoman, depending on your case, or at least everybody had that sort of lesson in how to sell your art, how to present your art, how to find a buyer, how to find a collector. So crypto artists are very well aware of the stuff that traditional artists might have, left over to somebody else. So how do you see
Yeah,
that?
but I would say that there's quite a lot of now considered OG crypto artists who still don't understand, I don't think, at all what that is. So
True.
Yeah, there's plenty of people that aren't easy. I got 2 dogs in here, and she just, what is it? Are you dreaming? I have a German Shepherd in here and a little terrier. I apologize. And the German Shepherd heard all that about money and went, I wonder. I think the thing is, I think what's funny is that everything is so visible here. Basically, where you know, like it's so, everything's so visible. No, like the prices are visible. What people know and don't, what people choose to respond to is very visible as well. It's like, but I don't know if, I think that there's an intersection between, a certain kind of crypto art collectors that come from the finance sector or the law even, or even from the medical sector, and some of them bring knowledge of money in, and it intermingles with artists, and their knowledge base is shared. But I know plenty of people that that have been in for a while, like Vista says, like, don't know anything about money, marketing. Like, it's like I know next to nothing about marketing. I only know a little bit about money. But like it's fascinating to see how people traverse this little bits and pieces of exchange.
I think what happened is that, and this is a little bit about the contention between crypto art and NFTs, is that I think NFTs were used to wash away the danger of crypto art quite a bit at the beginning phase, because if you really go into the depth of how money is created and all that, which is essentially the world's biggest power casino, and the artists were taking on. Well, this is what I'm saying is that you could argue that the previous avant-garde artist that we really had was Andy Warhol in the early 80s, who took on the power structures at B. And since then, I would say that the general art world has been pretending to be avant-garde, basically just rehashing many of the themes that Andy Warhol and his factory people kind of just pushed forward. And it's been in a very safe box that hasn't really been challenging a lot ever since. And what the early crypto artists did is that we came along and we said that we are the real avant-garde and we're taking on the central banking system, essentially. And that was quite a powerful statement and very dangerous to many things. So I think there was a large incentive in order to push that to the side as fast as possible and make it be about crypto kitties, so that it's just this exciting new way of doing collectibles and for some to make fast money and become that casino that is just an extension of the previous one. So that was a little bit about. Yeah, I would say that was an unfortunate part of it, but quite predictable in many ways. And I was, because in 2018, I think I was in Miami. I was at a conference, and I was at the Bitcoin Center in Miami, and I gave a keynote about how I was hopeful at that point in time that NFTs were going to bring transparency to a lot of the things that weren't transparent in the art world and help some of the money laundering issues and those kinds of things. And I would argue is that some of those public statements that I made in a very naive way about the art world, then the legacy art world, were the reason why I wasn't accepted for no reason whatsoever onto some of the major platforms, where a lot of people who I would say were far less accomplished were getting onto being promoted by those platforms and really became multimillionaires from it. And I'm still a relatively unknown to the more mainstream of crypto art because I wasn't on those platforms being pumped by some of those people. So while I agree with you, Andre, that there's a lot of transparency that is going on, and that was the idea of NFTs and crypto art, I think there was a lot of shenanigans and a lot of shadow work that was being done on the back end of crypto art that kind of were the opposite of what the principle was of why it was brought about in the first place.
Yeah.
And I think some of the prices of some of the artworks and some of the pumps of some of the artists as well didn't make any sense whatsoever. And I think a lot of those backhanded games were being played, and because I was either dumb enough or in Finnish ways honest enough to even imply that some of that was going on, and I never said any names or anything like that, but simply because I was kind of letting people know that I wasn't entirely down with some of that stuff that was going on, I was kind of conveniently pushed to the side.
Because you didn't want to play the reindeer games. Yeah. Yep. No, that's understandable. I think it's totally true, and it's true in I think even up until recently, although there will always be some malfeasance in any human system. The one that I remember the most clearly, where I took a sniff at it, and I'm sure you guys remember, there was a very big, I don't know why people call them meta narratives on the culture, but the patterns of crypto art, the little weird moments. The one that I remember most clearly, where I was like, this is fucking weird, it makes no sense to me on a supply demand kind of situation, even on a price situation, was when we were talking about open editions, where certain artists truly exploded during an open edition run of, what was it, 2020, even 2022 into 2023, where you could, there were all these things you could mint an infinite amount in a certain span of time. There were weird gamified mechanics, like if you burn X, you get Y, and certain artists really appreciated that bump. And it's very funny, as I can think of just from my friends' list. I think of like Terrell Dumb, who is a great painter and digital painter and illustrator. I think made a great bulk of his wealth and hype through that and his other works. And then on top of it, from there, his one-of-one market expanded. I think of I'm gonna keep name dropping on because I can't help myself, but like my friend Skillux, my friend Pia, where we were talking about money that could go from anywhere between the tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars, and for some millions of dollars. And it was this thing that made no sense to me, of this bum rush to pick up these strange little pieces, these great pieces, but these strange pieces where it's like the supply now was so grand, and the rush to get into the art world at an affordable price, at a cigarette butt stock price, let's say, but like to get into that world really made some people's careers at that time that were really crazy, and then just as crazily they just dropped off into the ether. Like that was a moment that closed, like it was open and closed, where people made millions of dollars. And I just look at that, and I am like, this is a very strange casino, that and even a strange finance thing that just still confuses me, in terms of what some of the games that are played that can boost an artist, like regardless of skill, is like if you're on a particular wave here, it can boost you tremendously. I don't know if those games are still played or not, but like it's fascinating to me, the amount of rampant speculation, again, from people that don't necessarily know about art, where money was just poured into this space sometimes, where I just go, why was this? There's that, or there's like Botto Project on Super Rare, right? The AI thing, which who knows if this will get me staked, but it's like one of the first very low lo-fi AI machine, where people just throw money at the thing to do an iteration of something, and it will make in the several hundreds of thousands in sales. And it's one of those things where I'm like, some of this is just pure money laundering in my mind, right? It's very strange.
Sorry, do you mind if I give a shot at a theory? If I could maybe, this is what I gathered after some time. What I thought, that in one way was going on. And I'll be fair to both to the kind of crypto community as well as the legacy money system, because from one way, if you look at the fractional money lending system and how money is being printed out of thin air, and especially during COVID, of how much everyone's savings were going down, how much money was being deflated, and all of the various assets that people had their value stored in were going just drastically down and down. So there were so many people who were waiting for the innovation of Bitcoin to become this impartial system where they could put their value to be stored, so no politicians or other people could make these decisions on their behalf to essentially steal their money. So Bitcoin became an asset class where people started to store their money, and then they started to hide it from the government to a degree so that they could, the casino couldn't rob them. But then they started playing their own different kinds of games, and they realized that with NFTs they could store their value even further and get even further from the kind of hands of the legacy system in a way. So this is why I would say that there's a little bit of something going on. Like you have the premise of Pulp Fiction or something like that. You have Butch, who's meant to be going down on the third or whatever it was, because his career is sort of never going to go much further anyway, and he's being offered all of a sudden a big payday, and he's going to keep some of it, and but other people are going to make masses on that if he just does the dive. And I think that's what happened to some artists, that they realized that that's what the position that they were in. And if they take the dive, then they would be even able to sell all of their art for a lot more, because it makes sense that they get to publicize that, oh, by the way, all of a sudden my piece sold for $500,000 or whatever it was. So other people get the signal that they should invest into you as well. So it's very beneficial for the mediocre artist to take the dive. And then the PFPs came along, and it's even easier because you don't even have to corrupt the artist in between. You can just do those transactions and they will show up like this. But where the money actually ends up and what happens to it is anyone's guess, and how that's going to go. So those kind of shadow games, even though on some way it's very sort of transparent, you get to play a lot on the back end of it, and that is not transparent at all. But that starts to kind of be that in one way, who's on the right here? Is it the legacy system that has the power of the law that is robbing everyone's savings and doing a lot of shenanigans? Is it the people trying to store their wealth, or is it them then trying to do like extra shenanigans to kind of win more power and more money? So it's like, I would argue, if you try and do the morally correct thing, or you try and walk the path of what the right thing to do is, you are in a very, very small minority of this whole crew, because it's very,
Right.
very difficult to try and understand who the bad or the good guys are if you really look at the whole picture.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense. So yeah, there's definitely also a very big shadow side to crypto art, or at least NFT art, I should say, or NFTs. I totally agree with what you've said. I've heard the stories myself, and I know some people who sort of dropped out because of it, or got totally sick of it. Luckily, it's not all of that. Otherwise, it would be really depressing.
A fucking nightmare. I mean,
Don't you also think it's partly also the legacy system that is still active? Because like you say, the people who are doing that within the Bitcoin system are basically doing it out of fear from the legacy system. And on top of that, you also have these VCs, of course, who are just swimming in cash, which is pumped into them through the legacy system in order to corrupt the ethos of the crypto system. I mean, basically the policies of the Fed with dropping rates and more or less printing money. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but sort of allowed these VCs to load up the coffers and do whatever they want. And a lot of that money came into the space and made a lot of people incredibly rich for now.
Well, because just to clarify very quickly what I have as a point, because some people think that I'm a kind of negative Nelly, and that it's not a good thing that people make money. On the contrary, I think it would be wonderful that like hundreds and thousands and hundreds of thousands of artists would become incredibly wealthy through this. I think that's a net positive for everyone if it would be the actual art that is really doing something, that is increasing the soul and quality of life and kind of all of that good stuff, that we would have culturally we would prop up the Michelangelos and the Da Vincis to the degree that we have them, and the Hilma af Klint's and the whatever, to rise to the top, so that we all aspire to something higher, and then to see those pieces at tens of millions of dollars or $100 million or whatever it is, and that elevates everyone in the enterprise. And no matter who is doing any of those financial games or whatever it is, then they're rightly at that point, because I think art can be that. It is one of the highest aspirations with our spiritual quest, on the side of what we can do as human beings. So I have nothing against this money making or all of this kind of thing, and the artists becoming and investors becoming super wealthy. It's just that don't do it in the shittiest way, that you prop up a McDonald's hamburger to become the gourmet restaurant item. That's what I have an issue with.
I wonder if so the thing that I found really fascinating, because this, like, I feel like we get each other. Like, for me, I also look at Andy Warhol as the guru of lowbrow, highbrow. Let's completely erase whatever thin line there is between these two, and let's elevate everything. Right? It's like everything is worth seeing, you know, in the carnival of existence, right? And I feel that. I think that with regards to the money games, I'm like, it's just gonna, I've come to the conclusion things are just gonna happen, right? Like, they're just gonna happen. I agree with you 100%. It's like, there's certain art I would love to see just rise to the top. And what I've found that for me, through the lessons of my friends, is that when I look at the macro, and the obvious human greed, and, you know, human greed that's in there, I look at it and I go, you know what, it is, you know what I mean? I can choose to play or not, right? So that's me. But when I look at the micro, I look at it as, for me, like, I found that my existence on here and my relative success has always gone with me making really close friends. I've been very lucky to be able to make really close friends with a lot of my collectors and like visit their houses and stuff, which is I guess an added benefit of oils, you know, like having this big physical object that I can haul over to someone or travel over to someone and like stay at their house if I need to, if I get a commission, or to hand deliver it if it's car driving distance, right, or whatever, a plane ride. But what that allows for me is that I find that when the collector has deep proximity, what am I talking like that? When you become friends, I'm sorry, when I become friends with my collectors, that like weird, it's like I get asked about what I enjoy every time, and I found that like every little bit of that influence and friendship ends up shaping what I end up seeing later, and what I end up seeing in my circle, what I end up seeing getting collected, right? It's like, I'm sure you've had a conversation with someone or other. It's like, who do you like, you know, like in the space? Like, who do you enjoy? Like, who would you grab? Like, for me, it's always the conversation of the artists that produce physical works. Who do you enjoy? Which is a great conversation to have, because I feel like it ends up allowing me, even if it's an illusion, it allows me that idea of like, I get to choose now. Someone's asking me what I fuck with in terms of the space, right? And, you know, maybe it's because the space is so weird. Maybe it's a Brazilian artist, or maybe it's a Turkish artist, or an Iranian artist that normally would not be able to get seen, that's producing incredible work. That would be, or, you know, I'm Venezuelan. So for me, it's like there might be a Venezuelan artist in the mix. It's like these funny little things where I think the human connection that is possible through this space is what ends up being its saving grace. Almost 100% of the time. I just try to keep myself away from the gambling. Like, fuck. Like, you got it. If I stare too hard at the gambling, it's like being in New York City for too long. It makes you super hard, you know? Like, I try to stay away as much as possible for my own sanity.
Yeah, the point I was trying to make in a roundabout systems, right? One system is still being born, and very much, you know, it's a nascent system. It's tiny. It's very, you know, it's like a puber, or, you know, maybe an adolescent, but it's very much influenced by its bigger brother, which is by now totally corrupt. So it takes a while for these sort of negative influences to leave the system, right? So and I think, you know, what you see in crypto and especially in the NFT market is basically the traditional system even worse. Like, because in the traditional system you at least have sort of these apparent rules that people try to live by, but in crypto and NFTs it's like a wild west, right? So that's, you know, one of the things that also attracts a lot of bad people to take advantage. But then you get the worst of both worlds, because you got unlimited money being created in the traditional system that finds its way in the wild west where we now live in, right? And then on top of that, there's probably also an additional motivation for the traditional world to paint NFTs, crypto, Web3 as negatively as possible, and I think they're doing a very successful job at it.
Sometimes. Sometimes I remember it was 2021, and it was, or maybe even the beginning of 2022, and I'd just had my first solo show. It's a very, very nice gallery called MAS, Miami Art Society. And I was talking to my curator friend who's there about what he thought of all this stuff. And I took him on to Super Rare. And then it was less about it was a matter of taste for him. But I quickly realized as our conversation went on, is like, this is the crypto art world does not benefit the traditional art world in any way. They should want to play as much as possible, and I think more and more are starting to play in terms of, even in like West Palm Beach in Florida, like there's this, you get this crypto art piece and you get it alongside the physical art piece, and it acts as a certificate of authenticity. They're trying to find a way to really plug it in, because the conversation has continued, but back then, I think it's funny because the way that we criticize the crypto art world, and rightly, like Vesa, like what you're saying is like, it's totally correct. It's like we criticize, it's like there's a real lack of curation, lack of education, that, or there's a only slowly growing curation and education throughout the space, and that's where those systems get to beyond the attack, right? Where like even like a Christie's or a Sotheby's is like, yeah, but you guys need us to curate you. Yep. You want a big brother's hand in the mix. Yep. We know what we're doing. Like, you guys aren't making as much money. Ethereum is down. Like, let us help you. We'll bring in celebrity collectors, and we'll toss you in the mix and all that stuff. It's interesting.
Well, I would say that there was the point of pressure, and I think why some of the early curators of the space didn't like what I was saying much was, again, a very human one and a very understandable one. And it's one of the thing of the whole of the postmodernism paradigm, because as far as I understand, for the most part, people going into art school, they learn maybe some of the masters and some of the classics, but most of it is really from the era of Warhol and forward. It's sort of everything to do with feminism, the kind of all the woke stuff, all the kind of one aspect of art that is very important, and what led to that, but it doesn't really take into account a lot from where we started from, which would be cave painting and body painting. It doesn't take into spiritual aspects. It doesn't take into it doesn't dwell into religious art and what that means, which is essentially world heritage and kind of ancient structures. It doesn't dwell into Egypt. It doesn't go into all of those educational, super important things that would give the grounding onto which to juxtapose a lot of the postmodernist stuff, and not only dismantle the quote unquote great stories without even having much of an understanding of what they really are. Mm-hmm. And my idea of what I started saying is that this is truly an opportunity to now do the blow away the gatekeeping of the postmodernist structure, to allow space for people to express from all the way from the cave paintings and body painting on to the metaverse future, for us to express the whole of the integration of the human art history into an expression, so that we don't have to be in this narrow sort of almost now corporate, legacy world paradigm and this kind of daddy perspective, as you say, Andre, of you, well, you want us to curate your next Warhol can hashed by the next whatever, and this is the message that the curators didn't really like, because and it's not their fault, but it's something that if they came from the legacy schooling system, they might have recognized that what I was saying had gravitas to it and had truth to it, but they wouldn't have had the expertise and the power all of a sudden to go on that ride to be the experts in that. So that's why they kind of, again, felt conveniently that this guy might be easier to push to the side, so that we just carry on from the Warhol onwards to take it to the metaverse from here, and not kind of take the inconvenient part that this blows apart the whole of the paradigm that we've been kind of shouting from the rooftops the last 40 years as the only option.
But that's of course also the problem that the legacy system is invested in a certain system, right? So it basically has to die in order to go away, right?
Well, I think, if I may,
yes.
So we're talking about certain curators and a certain group of curators, and we're talking about art school as well, which I think it's important, just as a caveat, is like, I felt, I had the ill-advised turn to like go to art school, and I realized in post that my problem was not choosing my teachers wisely, art school or no. And I feel like when it comes to a curator, a lot of them come from go to art school, they take an art history degree or what have you. Maybe I wish I had a curator on so I wouldn't put words in their mouth, but like I feel what you're saying, because I can imagine me going to art school 2010 2014, having the exposure that I did. I went to an art school that looked good on paper. Basically, you'll fucking laugh. It was Carnegie Mellon University, formerly Carnegie Technical School, which was where Andy Warhol trained to be an illustrator before going fuck all that and then disappearing. But as you can imagine, they used that as their like rallying cry, which was like, let's tear everything down to tabula rasa. Like let's go lowbrow, highbrow, conceptual. Let's see where it goes, without really ever looking at Andy Warhol, and then hiring different staffs at different levels of I would say our cultural exposure, or coming in with very particular biases, and that was a mess. I can only imagine going as an artist and coming out, you kind of have a choice as to what you're doing after that, because you're actively participating in dialogue with that art history, but you're producing art. You'll talk about it with your friends, but your whole goal is to be in the studio. I can imagine for an art history person that eventually becomes a curator, is like your professors are everything, your dissertation is everything. And school, I can only imagine what school is like for those voices, right? It's like you are potentially bringing in a very particular didactic format to things, and you're coming into the sphere, and you're just bringing all that with you. I don't know. I do think that this space does, weirdly enough, does actually counter you a little bit, because I think that it does very, very highly value the sacred and the personal. First off, because personally I'm biased, because otherwise I'd be fucked. I'd be out of a what do you call it, a job? But like, secondly is because I just notice that, again, like the people that are here for long enough, there's that deep yearning to touch that. Like whether that's something that they come in with, or that's something that they eventually gain over long exposure to whatever the mimetic virus of art is, which is I don't just want to participate as a curator or as a collector. I do want to participate with what? Did I say something wrong? She's grumbling. Don't huff at me when I say wrong.
I love to see those dogs.
They're cute. Flora's they're both girls. Flora's a big German Shepherd with a big bass voice. She's very sweet, very stoic. And then Penny is a little Papillon Terrier mix-up that just talks a lot, very sarcastic, very witty. And anyways, yeah, so what I was saying was like, yeah, it's I think there is that desire to connect, man. I think early you may have, do you feel like your exposure to collectors now is different, and curators is different in any way than when you first were coming in at all, Vesa?
Yeah, definitely. I think I found the people slowly but surely who resonated, because my goal was always to bring the best of the legacy world together with the best of the new NFT world together. And what ended up happening was a little bit the opposite to begin with, but slowly but surely, like for example, my gallerist Thomas Sermak, he runs the leading gallery of the Czech Republic called Sermak Eisencraft, and it took me. This was maybe about a year and a half ago or so. It took me about 10 hours of conversation to try and convince him, which he ultimately started understanding that NFTs aren't just garbage, that it's not just all the negative things. And that was the juxtaposition that I was trying to play, is that I truly love this technology. I really value this whole thing to the nth degree, to the point that I had been waiting for it to happen for such a long time before. And that's why it was so valuable to me that I felt the need to critique some of it, because it was too valuable to be thrown to the dogs, so to speak. Not present dogs not included in the reference. It's just that the whole thing of it was, but after 10 hours, he realized that no, there is something truly revolutionary and truly something important to here, that even with his stature and his client base and the people who will be looking at him funny starting to talk about this stuff to them, he felt he then understood it enough of how to talk to them so that he wouldn't lose his reputation and his standing when he starts to do so. Now, I could have only done that if I gave him the laydown of all the negative that he already suspected was true, and then was able to say, but this is actually the positive stuff. And this is what I think what happened in particular to begin with in the NFT space, is that there was just, people felt such enthusiasm and a power rush to come into this space, but they were so insecure because they really didn't have the standing. They didn't have the legacy world kind of education or art world or this and that. So it was easier to kind of do the standoffish, well, screw everything that has been was there before, we can do this ourselves kind of thing. And to a degree that was true, that it was kind of they were able to do it to a degree, but it was really bad for that whole thing of the legacy world and this new world to kind of talk to one another, because they really didn't have a common language. And me critiquing any of the NFT stuff from the early days it was just easier to pretend that I didn't exist, because then you could just do this thing and do the crash and burn that now happened with NFTs. And it was really painful for me to watch this whole process from beginning to end, because I never critiqued it because I wanted to be a negative Nelly or critique it because I was not liking it. Like many people were critiquing this space because they thought that, they just wanted it to go down and it's worthless and they didn't understand it. That's not the reason I said any of those things. I said it because I loved it and I wanted to become better, and I wanted it to be implemented so that it becomes the shiny super thing that it really has the potential of becoming. So that's really my angle towards it. I think art critics were also something that I wish to see more in this space, that we would, because it was sort of obvious that at the beginning of the 2000s, many of the legendary art critics from the legacy world started seeing that, excuse me, that there's nothing more that I can really say about this, that this is becoming so weird. And if I said anything negative, I just wasn't invited to the next show anymore. Mm-hmm. And they weren't, because they didn't do it for the money to begin with. The money was garbage for the critics anyway, but then they couldn't even associate or do their job properly. So my hope was that some of those real critics and lovers of art who would be able to do some of the hierarchy stuff in a good way, they would come in and they would get paid from NFTs in order to do what they do objectively. And that's what I was pushing towards, is that, hey, right, let's get these guys to come in to do their work, to kind of do the curation, not only because they want to pump their own bags of NFTs that they've collected, but we would have true, authentic art critic voices that would understand this space and then help it grow as well. But it's just not something that has yet happened, but I'm still hopeful it does.
That's your absolutely noble struggle. I could totally see how that would be very painful. It's I get where you're coming from in that pain. It's like having a friend or family member that is doing something incredibly self-destructive, and you're trying to snap them out of it, right? So you ever have a friend with drug problems, and you're just like, I want to help you. Like for me, it's very clear. I have solutions for you, and they're just not ready for it. Then you have to just walk. It's like, okay, like let me take a little bit of distance so I don't get hurt here. Seeing you get hurt, I feel you 100%.
But it's also sort of the space itself, right? I mean, it is a nascent space. It's young, it's enthusiastic, like you said. It's sort of bringing in the whole world. So it was easy to fall victim to a lot of these things, and it has to grow up. And I think people like yourself, right, who are super early, you're sort of coming more and more to the fore. That's basically my next sort of line of questioning. Where do you see crypto art go? Do you see it go anywhere? And do you think, for example, the NFT boom that we had, these cycles, are they gonna return? Are they gonna change? Is it positive, negative?
Andre, please take this one.
Oh fuck. I am 100% positive. I'm 100% positive that it does occur in cycles. It does. I also am 100% positive on, again, it's like as a movement. Like I know, like we have so many people so firmly entrenched. Early on, I remember seeing this stuff getting compared to fads, I think, as a way of waving things off. I think the most popular one I heard was Beanie Babies. I was like, that's vaguely insulting. That like this thing that, has so many different revolutionary facets to it, from being able to actually, the thing that really got me at first, where I was like, this is really staying, was how would you purchase a digital asset, like something like an animation, where animators were being paid fuck all for what one artist, I'm a very lazy artist. It's like, I know how much it takes me just to do one panel. Can you imagine making multiple panels, learning multiple technologies, and being some octopus, like multifaceted Hydra, and then getting paid 30,000, 50,000 a year for getting paid fuck off money for an obra maestra? Is like, holy shit. So for me, I saw that and I was like, well, I like that, museums collect, like there's some, like black and white charcoal animation, and I forget, it's Jan Stankmeyer, right? So it's like, they have some animation. There's a little bit of digital here. There's a fetishization for the digital that was happening in the 2010s and the 2000s too, along with graffiti. But like, this is the first marketplace where you'll actually be able to sell that and buy that. Or glitch art, you'll be able to sell it and buy it without putting it on a silk screen or something like that, and have to go through even yet another process. So for me, it's a market that was always asked for, and it's here, period. And then there's also the royalties, which OpenSea can get fucked and Blur can get fucked, but the royalties were a staple of the movement, because once you introduce royalties into the mix, that really was what turned it into a full tilt movement. And there's just so many different ways to approach the game, whether you're approaching it from a physical perspective, where it acts as both its own piece, or it acts as a or an art piece that's on a piece of crypto art that is physical. The crypto art can act as a certificate of authenticity, or it can be, you could sell two pieces essentially, or make endless iterations on one piece. I'm just like, there's no reason for this to ever go away. The cycle thing, I believe in at heart. I have nothing to back it but my spirit, right? I'm just like, there's just no, it's eventually people will cotton on that they don't have to go through. So have you guys, I'm sorry, I promise.
That's a lot of fantastic points. What I would just add to it is a little bit that I think we're still following a cycle, because most of the people buying the crypto art are crypto bros first before they're collectors. And most of the legacy world, let's say like some of I suspect pretty much all of the clientele of my gallerist Thomas, who are high power people in the art world, almost none of them have bought a single NFT at this point, and they're sitting on massive bags of money, and they just haven't seen yet or become familiar with, because now there's tremendous quality in this space. There's tremendous artists who are really putting out great stuff, but I keep seeing them being very, very frustrated that their art is not being received or it's not being bought. That has nothing to do with crypto or crypto cycles. And in one way, many of the people in that echelon who are collecting art still, that are unaffected by all the things that would have been happening at the market at large, who are still collecting art as normal, they haven't discovered this space. So it's not long ago that I think it was something like 100 art collectors in this space altogether, like real ones, who are putting enough money to kind of really make some sort of an impact on it, as opposed to those who were just maybe doing quick flips and following something that is not much to do with art collecting itself. So in that sense, as artists who are doing substantial art first, with that as the true north, we haven't even begun to find the actual collectors who would come to support and help that art to be collected. So once that happens, then we will break the cycle, and we will know that then those real collectors have come in when it's no longer tied to the cycle of crypto.
So why do you think the real collectors are not here yet?
Because of a lot of the things that happen in the early phase of it, and kind of all the shady games that were being played behind the scenes underneath a lot of pretense. And they saw it and went, I want nothing to do with this. And then because they signed off once, or even maybe gave it a second shot and still saw the same games being played, then they just said, well, okay, this is not for me entirely. So they might have missed a lot of the great art coming in, or some of very legit people who are in this space building it from brick by brick. So because it's just human psychology. You get disappointed with someone once, it's very hard to give it another shot. And especially, I would say, a lot of these people who are the significant collectors today, they are probably 50 plus, 60 plus, 70 plus. You know, they're not in the vein of this thing yet happening. And when we come to the people who are in their late 20s or early 30s or something like that, who have come to a lot of money for one way or another, I would argue that not many of them yet have had the opportunity to become sort of sophisticated in art enough to understand why they would be coming in, as opposed to like all the things that now have become the phenomena that this is. So we're very, very early, and this is why I think it's been a long battle for me to be a digital artist for 15 years and then watch. It's like I've ran a marathon and then had to do a sprint once this started happening, and I was already quite gassed and kind of like wishing for things to go in one way, and then realizing I was in another marathon after that. And it's still done me very well. I'm so much happier as a person after I got onto this bandwagon, and I'm happy to keep fighting the good fight. But it really is just doing it brick by brick and keep doing the right thing time and time again in order for this to become something that is noteworthy to those who would go, oh, that makes sense to me. I will put whatever resources into this, and I can now, they can feel they can back it.
I think you're making me think a lot, man, honestly, because I've had this in the back of my head for a while, and I haven't been able to have a very good conversation with an OG specifically about this. So, dude, I appreciate you. I think I'm literally just gonna spitball here.
Likewise, bro. Super happy to have this.
Fuck yes. So I'm just gonna spitball here. Tell me what you think about this, because I didn't think about that. I didn't think about, we have a whole echelon of collectors that participate in the traditional art market, and you're right. It's like there's the fuckery would have been what turned me off. The lack of curation, would have turned me off. Also, the lack of a trusted voice, like your, I'd imagine you're a collector. You form a pretty good relationship with the art dealer and the gallerist, or the gallerist that you're talking to, or the curator. I think that there are a couple of paths forward. I think that it will continue to grow, but I think where artists, curators, and everybody that is part of this space really could do well, I think, to follow just off my intuition, is embracing not the traditional art market as it stands, but the traditional art world as a form of education. And it takes me back to the conversation of non-for-profit art spaces, right? I think it was Cosimo de' Medici donating works to the LACMA, artists that are digital or physical or what have you, specifically searching out maybe not as much gallerists and places that sell art and take their commission, although I think that helps as well. I think where it helps the most is those artists, those curators, those people that give a shit about the space, approaching non-for-profit spaces. Museums, non-for-profit galleries exist, non-for-profit spaces, even community centers, right, where you can put artwork up and it's not necessarily for sale. It is the art for its own sake. And then when you inevitably meet the collectors that donate to these places, because they're not-for-profit, they're donation based. If you ever go to, you've been to a museum, that giant wall of names and God knows drug dealers and pharmaceutical companies and Bruce Waynes and all that donate to those. You end up meeting them, and then they're like, well, who do I, if they love your work, they're just like, well, where do I can't pick it up here. Do you have a gallery representation? And you go, no, I actually have, but you can buy it if you go to this. I've been selling from this website. And I think where crypto art really has an incredible boon is how naked the pricing and buying and selling is. Like if we go to our requisite platforms, you can see how much we sold for sale to sale, year to year, and we can actually have a whole conversation, and it doesn't require any like, oh, the work is worth this or this much. It's like, well, this is how much it's sold for in the past, and we have it all kind of neatly there for you. And if you want it, it's there for you to grab. Otherwise, let's just keep on having our relationship. It's a pleasure to meet you. And then eventually, I'm sure you've had this experience too, is like eventually that relationship, it may be 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years, but somebody buys something. It's like if you're truly friends with that person, so they end up picking up something, whatever tier it is. So that's my spitball, is that it behooves us individually within this movement to both continue being human beings to each other within the moment and within, Twitter or whatever the platform is, to each other. And then on top of it, to be reaching out to non-for-profits, and seeing, like getting their attention, maybe getting into a group show, you know what I mean? Getting into eventually maybe even a solo show, right? It's like, and I feel the work will shine if it's good, because those people will be able to tell what those people, most of those curators of those non-for-profit space, that's what they have the eye for, is the spirit, depending on where you go and what they show. So I don't know. That's my spitball take as to like how to fast forward this growth, if at all humanly possible.
I think that makes a lot of sense, because otherwise you have the sort of the irony that the old guard is waiting for the institutions to step in order to guarantee quality, and then you get the whole thing all over again. Or for it to become so easy to use, because there's also the technological barrier, of course, especially since the elderly in our society hold most of the money, the boomers. So there's that too, right? So I think your proposal makes a lot of sense here.
Definitely, and one of the things that I think is so resonant about what Andre is saying is that there's a certain amount of kind of quote unquote shadow work that has to be done in order to find the humility of no matter who you are. If you're a collector, if you're an artist, if you're a gallerist, if you're a metaverse holder, it's you have to find the humility to admit to the things that you don't know to benefit from the other. But it only works if the other person is that too. So if you have someone who might not be very well versed in the legacy art system, but they're super forward thinking in the metaverse, they have to have the humility to approach the legacy art world people, and then they will have to have the humility to respect and honor the stuff that they know this other person knows about all the future of the virtual galleries, in order for them to come together in a good way. Because otherwise it'll become this kind of dig your heels into a deeper hole and throw hand grenades at the other side, where no one learns a damn thing. It's those kinds of things. And I'm trying to find the good balance of how to. I might have been, who knows why. Some people didn't resonate with me. I can only guess, but I might have been too harsh in my critique of some things and not maybe looking at my tone of voice sometimes enough, or whatever it
Dude,
was.
I'm guilty all the time. I can't speak for you, but I know that pain.
I think it comes with the territory, right?
We all sort of learn together, but that's the only ways that we do ultimately all need each other in this game in order for this to go forward in the optimal kind of way. It's like it's the same for the boomers and the super bright 15-year-olds who know endlessly more about technology at this point than I do. It's like,
yeah. I got some bad news for you guys because I've been also keeping an eye on the chat. But Patrick, he can't make it, so he has to literally have a rain check.
Whatever.
So
I'll miss it, but the conversation's so good. Like, what do you want me to say? Like, oh man, gotta go. Peace. Like, I hate to cut this good conversation show, but I was really just here to rub Patrick's shoulders.
No. But I mean, there will be many more crypto panel discussions. So
we'll talk to him.
We'll fit him in somewhere.
I'm liking this. I'm liking this quite a bit.
But for the people who are watching and waiting for Patrick, it's not gonna happen. You have to watch another crypto panel discussion. So, I want to sort of leave with both of you saying, are there any sort of projects that you're working on, or is there anything that you want to highlight, or is there something that you want to circle back on in the conversation?
Andre, do you want to go first?
Dude, we're holding the doors open for each other each time. I love it. Fuck. Highlight.
We can continue, by the way.
I've got at the moment I'm just working on a bunch of paintings. So when the time comes, I will give you guys the heads up. I've got like 6 in front of me. So it's when things come, they will be coming to Manifold and Super Rare. But at the moment, we're in the clear until tomorrow. I will probably the painting that you have up. I'll be good about this. Why not? The painting that you have up, the ETH Goddess bull run, question mark, on the right of the screen. That piece is literally getting finished up right now. I should have a picture of it probably by tonight or tomorrow, which means that this week I will be releasing. Excuse me.
And I got one more.
It'll be an edition of 10, and the physical painting, which is a 9 by 12 inch, not the 9 by 12 inch painting, will be released as a form of a raffle. So if you buy one of the 10 editions when it comes out for this piece of the goddess and the big golden glowing bull, it'll be released. And if you buy an edition, you are automatically entered into the raffle for the painting itself. And I'm just going to give a heads up to whoever's listening that I take my deliveries very, 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 very seriously, whether they are domestic in the United States or internationally. I make sure that these things are bulletproof, that no ignorant imbecile tosses it around and it gets to your house all fucked up and scuffed. I protect it to its absolute utmost. So this will be given away to one of the edition holders of the 10 editions. Each edition will be 0.1, but more on that will come this week. So that's it. That's your alpha, I suppose.
Well, and what about this piece that I just pulled up?
So Raphael's been in the running for some time, and unfortunately, thank you. For those that don't know, I am an incredibly spooky person. I'm a magician, and I love working particularly with at least one or two rituals that involve archangels. So for me, part of that ritual involves visualization, and I work with the 4 associated with various elements. And the one pictured here is Raphael, who is the archangel of the east and of the air. So as you can imagine, the air is alchemically would be of clear thought, right? It's the tool associated with that would be the sword, which is manifesting out of thin air through the robes. And I've had this piece on the mantle for a little bit. This will be an open edition just because I think it's fun and funny. Like I had another Archangel piece. It turned out to be an edition of 6. So it's one of those things where you would end up getting a when it does come out, it will be a beautiful edition. You have a potential to grab a very, very low edition. Although for this one, the painting will not be included as a. It's very important to me to have that on the wall in my studio, particularly in the East. It's essentially it's a ritual object for me to be able to look at this and see it and be able to continue doing iterations of it in my head when I close my eyes and enter the little fugue state just before meditation. So
Oh, they're absolutely gorgeous.
yeah,
beautiful work.
Thank you very
I
much.
very much resonate with that, because also that's how I kind of got into the body painting realm, is that I'm not an educated painter. I'm still, after 15 years, I'm self-trained in that, and I would still say out of the toolbox of different things that I have, in many ways, painting is still probably the one that I'm least competent in. As a filmmaker, I jumped in with photography and Photoshop and directing and lighting and knowing how to do things, and macro photography of the paintings that I did. But the whole thing was that I was also educated as a NLP coach, so neuro-linguistic programming,
No way.
kind of hypnosis thing. So what I started doing when I hopped from filmmaking is that I thought to experiment with, to find someone to body paint, and then help them with NLP to get into a state where they could let go of things that were no longer working for them, or craft a future for themselves, and kind of get into this eternal state. And then when something was happening inside of these models, then I would, or collaborators, I don't know what to call them really, to kind of capture that on camera, and then paint a realm that would be their world, as well as how that relates to the bigger world and the archetypes and what was going on with the world at the same time. So it was very much a ritualistic process.
Fuck yeah,
and still keeps being that. So I thought that was maybe a good point to bring, and why I resonated with your work is that I felt like it had that same kind of frequency about it.
I knew we get along good, man. I knew it. Nobody talks about NLP enough. Fucking ridiculous.
It is one of the most beautiful tools, that's for sure. And then of course it's the psychedelics and all those different kinds of things that were on top of that, and whatever, all the material that I resonated with. But if I would bring something up, would be the thing that we talked about, Nicholas, the last time, because I still haven't really published almost any of the works from the Juxtaposer series.
Yes.
And in case someone didn't tune in when we were discussing this the last time, I'm just briefly going to say it, because I'm hoping my next show is going to be in Switzerland with the Crypto Oasis guys in Zurich.
Fuck yeah.
I think it's from 12th to 17th or something like that. That is the ecosystem festival that I'm going to go on to, and I'm hoping that if the negotiations go right, then I would launch the first 10 as a collaboration with one of the kind of platforms there. It's not confirmed yet, but I'm looking forward to the opportunity to bring them about. But essentially what they are is, because some of the culture war stuff was driving me nuts in so many different levels, and I wasn't able to articulate, because it's such a trepidous world, because as soon as you say something that is against someone else's narrative, then you get painted into this corner and then that corner and whatever. And this whole thing was so,
they love their labels, don't they?
It's so toxic that I needed to find an outlet of how to do it in a way that it makes sense. And simultaneously I was looking forward to kind of figuring out how to do AI art in a way that it would make sense to me. And what I started kind of playing about with was this idea is that if you have someone like Russell Brand, who's now painted as a sort of right-wing figure, bizarrely, because he's such a classical leftist who's just anti-establishment. Or then you have someone like Ben Shapiro, who's a right-wing dude, who's an establishment figure. But how the sort of left and right are so insufficient and so convoluted and weird now that anyone who has an understanding of what those meant just 10 years ago is kind of like just baffled of what's going on. So this particular image here is how, when you insert the anti-establishment and establishment paradigm into the left and right that are kind of purposefully reversed in this
Gorgeous.
picture, you start to make a lot more sense of what is going on, of how many of the people who are now left but pro Pfizer are just left and establishment. And that starts to breathe in some space into this whole thing. And I started playing about with all of these different kinds of concepts of how to come up with this very kind of traditional portrait world.
I'm sorry, bro. I wasn't expecting to find Andrew Tate's silly ass in here. That was dude, you're so okay. I've been trying to talk to people about this for a long time, and it's very hard for people to understand, but I feel that I actually don't like the only people that should have the only people that have any nuanced political opinion where I like hearing is, I don't like hearing it. I love seeing it. Like, I love fucking seeing an artist respond to everything around them. Because, you know, it's politics usually sink an artist into sometimes making some pretty rough art. This is amazing. This is so funny, so beautiful, like, and such a fucking eloquent response to the whole thing. I feel you 100% on everything. It's also like the way the meaning of the left and the right changes it's so what you're saying is so true. Is like, even what was it in America, right? It's like the Democrats were the even it was 1800s even or before, or was it, or are we talking even 1950s where, like, you know, pro slavery, pro segregation, right? Like, that was what the party was, and it's like morphed into something else. And it's like the idea, these symbols and these meanings and these weird labels that people cling to, not knowing that, you know, in now an even shorter time of the cultural exchange, they mean less and less. You cannot cling to them. You cannot, and yet people still do. And I feel artists are so like, this is so well suited. This is amazing, man. That's all. I'm done. I'm done gushing. This is great. This is fucking fantastic.
It means the world that you'd get it so quickly, and that I very much appreciate the words. It's just that it took a long time for me to try and figure out what the format would be, and it's I would say in true alignment with the idea that the machines we made were originally meant for human liberation, for us to be able to do more art and have more kind of cosmos exploration and this kind of thing, and that we ended up becoming more the slaves of the machines than the other way around. And I thought, if I'm going to do this AI art thing, what is the quintessential theme that it has to have? Is that how can AI art breathe some more space into human interaction and for our kind of exploration of time and space? Then I thought, well, okay, if I do a whole series of very famous people and I absolutely fuck with their image, but not in a clear-cut way. It's not that. So Andrew Tate is someone who is anti-establishment, and he's all these different things, and people have so many varied different kind of perceptions of him. It's not a flattering thing, and it's not a praising thing. It's just his image as an Amish apple picker. So it's kind of like he's known for a high dopamine ride turned into a low dopamine ride, but he's still anti-establishment. And I would argue that if you're an Amish, you're much more anti-establishment than what he represents at this moment in time. So it's not a 180 reversal of what he is. It's further anti-establishment in a way, but it's immediately kind of funny. But it's not something that people are then going to say, oh, well, Vesa is automatically pro Andrew Tate or anti Andrew Tate. It's none of those things. It's more like you're going to have to look at this person now from a different angle, and you're going to have to take the paradigm of establishment and left and right and many of the other paradigms, almost like a puzzle piece game that is going to allow you to have a little bit more space on how to start looking at that person.
This is where I completely see where you're coming from, and I feel everything about this. This is why I like writers like Gonzo journalism. So Hunter S. Thompson, right? It's like when you read old articles from Rolling Stone. I remember reading one about a West Palm Beach divorce case, pretty clear cut. You know, billionaire marries 50-something billionaire marries 19-year-old cheerleader from fuck all New York. She comes over. It's 4 or 5 years later. They have kids. They've done, I think, even in just 1 year, $500,000 worth of cocaine, and she's, you know, it's a lot of cocaine use, so it's a lot of visible aging on both parties. And he kicks her to the curb, And the way that he wrote about it was really interesting because it was, it's a very obvious story. You don't have to be like, oh, the poor woman. It's like, oh, this man and all these things. He wrote in a way that was like, you very equal judgment on either side. You're not throwing anyone into any direction. And he's just doing this thing almost immediately where he's just responding to the situation at hand and writing about it and responding his own way, in his artistic way. And what I find fascinating is the way that you've used AI, which, a lot of people criticize, fine artists get so upset about it, where it's this instantaneous art form, where I'm sure people were upset about collage before, you know what I mean? Or like where painters were afraid of the camera before, right? Mm-hmm. And you're using a more immediate art form in various, like these more immediate art forms to create a statement that provides more than just a dichotomy of meaning. It provides a whole reflection that we can just enter into and be like, well, what does it say for me to look at these figures now in this new context? And I think you did a fucking genius job with all this shit, man, with each image, not just the Tate one. The Tate one just had me dying. Or even this motherfucker here. It's the same. Oh my God, they're just so good, dude. Fuck.
I had a lot of fun, I must admit, and it was a lot of pent up frustration, kind of finally finding an outlet that I felt that was more constructive than destructive. And the nice thing about it is that when you start, I've only done the first 10 now, and I only put the first 3 on the website for a reason there, because I don't want to yet publish them. But there's no one is safe. It's no matter from what end you come from it, I will fuck with your image. So, which makes it the whole thing again is that it's hard to pinpoint, because it's really not about me in a way. It's like I don't want it to be an exploration for someone to try and figure out what it is that I think of these people. All of the people that I've picked here, there are elements that I like about them and elements that I don't like about them, as there are with any human being, but they're undoubtedly cultural power figures that are either censored or then at the forefront in a different kind of way. And this one particular, if you don't mind, I'll just say it, because it's the court gesture in this time is so important, and why I have such love and admiration for stand-up comedians is that that when they're starting to be censored and really, really oppressed, that society is in very bad standing. So if they do have a humorous element from all different angles towards it, and they make people laugh and take themselves a little bit less seriously and kind of allow us to be more human, then they really are doing their job. And this particular one usually gets a bit of a laugh because nearly every male on the planet knows the porn star Riley Reid. So I took her image and made her a Kansas sort of traditional Midwestern girl, and she has her own cooking show and her family. So they do this cooking show together, and she represents these family values and is very successful on YouTube as the new wave and this and that. So she's still a media figure, and she's still known for her cream pies, but standing for some opposite values. So it's this kind of thing. It's just been so much fun, dude, to put this stuff together.
Oh, bro, it's genius, dude. It's fucking brilliant. Oh my God, man. It's just, man, it's your, thank you. I'm so glad that we get to talk about that, and I get to see these pieces here that like for me, like I said, it's this let's call this political art, for the sake of saying it, because of ease of language. But like political art, like I've seen people slave over it, right? And create a funny sentiment, and you run 2 risks, I feel like, right? It's like you run the risk of, can I finish this motherfucker fast enough to be salient and enjoy the zeitgeist of it, and in this internet age publish it and get the response that I'd like. And then you have the other side, which is, is like, how does this piece, the mortifying of it, where it's like, well, how long is this salient for? And that's why I feel like here, what you've done is you've taken AI, given its complexities, suits itself so beautifully to this, the court jester stylization of stuff. And it's just so like, it just blows my mind how much fun you're having with this, and how funny it is, and how effective it is. it like each of these pieces has just rooted me back down to reality with big fucking belly laughs. Like Riley Reid with her this motherfucker, the cream pies. Oh my god. But like, dude, it's just so good, man. It's so good. Like, goddamn, it's so good. Have you ever heard of Sekhmet theory by any chance? I don't know why it's named after an Egyptian goddess. Are you familiar with that at all?
Nope.
Yeah, I've heard Sekhmet obviously before, but not the theory of it. No.
So Sekhmet theory, I don't know why it's called this. I read it in Grant Morrison's novel, his autobiography and history of comic book book called Super Gods, and he talks about how we're like some cultural anthropologists created this theory where every decade-ish, based on some pseudoscience about like bubbles in the sun or something, every decade we switch modes between four modes, right? And which modes they are is, I think, random, if I remember, but maybe they're not, where it's like we have a cultural mode of I'm okay, you're okay, right? We have a cultural mode of I'm okay, you're not okay, right? We have the cultural mode of I'm not okay, you're not okay, and you have another cultural mode of I'm not okay, but you're okay. And so I don't, it doesn't, but it's not important to remember them all. But I find it funny that we had this moment over the last 10 years that I think we're slowly slipping out of. And I feel like your work also, this particular body of work is showing what I'm seeing of this confirmation of we are moving out of the everyone's canceled for everyone is in danger of getting canceled for this and that. We're going to certain there's just certain things that you absolutely cannot say or comment on, even if it's a nuanced take on whatever the subject matter is, and you have to be really worried about what you say and how you say it amongst people. And I feel like comics were getting canceled left and right over all sorts of insane shit, right? Is what's his name, the redhead with the beard, he's bald, Louis C.K.
Yeah.
That, right? And just Dave Chappelle every other second, and it's just like, yeah, the comics that most of it is not serious, were being just thrown into the grinder and had to face public backlash for trying to make people laugh most of the time. Not the Louis C.K. one, at least, but that one was a little bit weirder. Still funny, but weirder. It was very fucking funny. Dave Chappelle made it funny, but like, yeah, you have to be very careful what you say. And I feel like we're starting to come out of that now, because you can't clench culturally, go like forever. You can't.
It's the new Puritans. I think it was something to do with the loss of religion again as well. Is that all of a sudden the so-called liberals turned out to be the most puritanical and anti-liberal people, and that was a weird kind of convoluted thing to witness to happen. And I think it's just the human psychology that we those people professing to be the most liberal or progressive are just a new form of the old puritanical religious people, but their religion is just different. And it's just these polarities that keep playing with one another, kind of like the human psychology needs some people to be conservative and some people to be liberal, and sometimes the terms get convoluted, but when you really analyze what they stand for, is to conserve something, but what that something is not necessarily what it's been described as for a century before it, or things like that. So I look at it from a psychology standpoint, as in like, okay, so what are you wanting to do? You're wanting to have this one narrative and oppress all others, even though you use the word inclusion. And it's bizarre of how this kind of interplay always works and takes new forms. But that's how you get into many of these, like the concept of Maya and all being illusion, and kind of the eternal play of it, because you can't really utterly ever grasp it properly, because it's always in motion and always doing its thing. And all we can do as individuals is to try and distance ourselves enough from it to kind of reconnect to some source. And that's what I felt, Andre, from your work when you were having the discussion last time with Nicolas, and you were telling of the sort of ayahuasca experiences and these kinds of things, is that we're in that sense, and I use this word carefully, privileged, that we've had these experiences where we've sought them out and we've been shown things of how we can distinguish in between the sort of a little bit, what would you say, maybe false self, or the kind of being in the flow of things. And it's maybe for people like us or artists, it's a little bit easier to navigate that realm than it is if you haven't had any of those experiences, because it's easier to be sucked into the falseness of it all in a certain way. So this is why I feel that artists have a very difficult mission in this point in time, when you have so many people who've detached themselves from the natural cycle and to a great degree from themselves, and then those who speak to that reconnection of it. It causes a lot of pain in those who might even hear the truth in that what you're saying is that you should get reconnected, and that's the source of your pain, and that kind of triggers all the demons of it. So then, of course, whoever is the messenger of that is going to get an avalanche of garbage. And this is what I felt very careful about, of how, if I touch this culture war thing in art in this kind of way, how can I do it so that it doesn't become what I've seen to happen to so many different people who have now sacrificed their whole lives to concepts that were just laughable yesterday. And it sucked them into this vortex, and it's consumed their lives to the point where I don't want to see that happen to myself. I want to stand for these kinds of things, and this grounding towards what is the best of reality and what is the best of the esoteric.
Yep.
I think you don't want to put a stake in the ground, but you do it in a very playful, open way, as a gesture, right? And because it's basically the intolerance of tolerance that we're seeing. So people are so tolerant that they no longer tolerate stuff.
Right, but there's also this thing where, when we're very lucky, in the sphere, and just also, as artists, as just like here being in the sphere, like a lot of us have third amount of free time. Can you guys hear me? We're good still?
You fell away for
Oh man, I can't hear you guys, so that's a problem.
Okay.
Give me 1 second here. How can you guys hear me now?
Yes. Can you hear us?
Yep. Or
I think he can't hear us. Okay. It'll drop out and back in. But I'm really enjoying this conversation, and I'm really happy to put it together.
Yeah, me too, brother.
We're good?
Yes.
Yep. Solid? Okay, sorry. I got a unfortunate Discord call. They called me twice. I don't know why. We're very lucky. We have a lot more. We have at the least we can all agree we have a lot of more free time than most people. And the people that don't have free time, it's a lot harder to borrow a phrase from one of my teachers, is to step back from the wall, right? It's like when you're exercising for a very long time and you're committed to a period of like a peak mental, physical activity, there's like the wall that's in your head. It's like, I'm hitting my limit. And that's people on the day-to-day. Eat just mentally. It's like you're right by the wall. It's whatever's coming at you, whatever you might be worried about, whatever cultural patterning or whatever that you may or may not be aware of. It's like that's the wall, but you don't realize you can step back. And artists have that ability to step back from the wall and just have a minute and just take a breath. And I feel like that is where artists get to have the most fun, right? And I feel like where the jester is the most free and continues to be the most free is like, it's a carnival. Like, you are having so much fun with this. Once it becomes serious, I think once these exterior cultural, societal, family, group, personal karmas become serious is where I think requires disentangling oneself. But the way that you're facing them is with total like laughter and with the aim of like, I find this so funny, right? It's like, I would love it if you found this funny, but I find it so funny, which is the most important thing. And because you find it so funny, the people that also find it funny are like, I'm flocking to this, man. Like, this is fucking excellent. And for me, that's how I see the space, and also how I see prospective collectors should be looking at this space. Is like, is this astounding me through humor, through beauty, through sexuality, right? Is this astounding me through potentially my own awareness of my own death, right? And questions of what might lie afterwards. And so for those are my criteria for usually a very, very good work. Or even and an even more market driven point, PFPs, even, because there are some really outrageous PFPs that exist. Then I'm just like, what does well? It's like, well, look at the silly, stupid shit. Like, that doesn't have any, it's not trying to trick you. It's a crypto dick butt. What's the utility? Is you have it in your pocket. What is it? It's a dick coming out of a butt, or it's a dick with a butt. Like, it's a dick with a butt with a dick coming out of it, or like something equally retarded, like I've got my apologies, for like trippy buttholes, for example, which is just like coarse. It's so coarse, and it's just so funny, and it's so outrageous, and so right there for you, that it snaps you out of reality, your quote unquote reality, like your Maya. And I think that it's incredible. Those are the things that I look for in art, like what I want it to do, right? Whether comedy, fine art, anything, PFPs, like that's what I like. That's what I see should succeed.
Like trash art.
Yes. Well, trash art, yeah. But even then, the lowbrow should make me laugh or give me awareness of all these things, right? So that's where Warhol commits and does well too. It's like how goofy it is to see a can of Campbell's soup done in like a 5 foot by 5 foot canvas or whatever, or like a car crash from an image from a newspaper turned into fine art. It's like, well, that just gave me an awareness of my own mortality. Like, well, what the hell? Or like Marilyn Monroe, that gave me an awareness of my own sensuality and sexuality. Like, whoa, it's vaguely tantric. Warhol is without meaning to be. But yeah, that was yeah.
But it becomes kind of scary when that becomes the new institution or the new normal, sort of, because it sort of focuses in on the base level.
Yeah.
But yeah, the playfulness and the openness and the revolutionary spirit that he breathed into art was, of course, very good and very powerful and very necessary also.
Yeah.
Is there something, Andre, that, because I would love to learn more about your work and what you find to be some of the kind of landmark pieces that have kind of defined your career for yourself, when you felt like something new happened to you as an artist and a new page kind of opened, or things like that. Would you mind showing any of that stuff or talking about it? Because I'd be very curious.
Sure. Well, I mean, for me, what opened me up significantly was I've had a very long love affair with surrealism. I got really lucky to be exposed to it very young by my father and my grandfathers, and able to see some wild paintings. The one that I remember most is like Christ of St. John on the Cross, which was a weird one for me because it really didn't look much like a painting. As later I look at it, I'm like, this is a collage that was put into a painting. Like, this is what this is. And it's this little moments of response. And I think what really opened me up as an artist was realizing, I think in 2020, that this idea of genius was opened up to me. So in 2017, I had an ayahuasca experience that gave me a lot of permission to make whatever I wanted for various reasons. I was just like, I'm here for a short amount of time. There's more than I think out here, and I want to contribute while I have a physical body. So that it enabled me to be like, I am an artist, period, flat. And that's where my art career really started. And I started even had the luck of moving a couple of pieces and actually paying my rent. But it wasn't until about in 2018, late 2018, I met my now fiance. She opened me up significantly to what was possible in terms of like making things happen in the real world, and art became a very big part of that for me. She taught me she gave me very silly, you know, like seemingly very silly books, like The Secret, you know, like every 2000s mom and yoga instructor seem to have this very silly book with little, like the pages are clearly printed and glossy, but they're made to look like they're ancient manuscripts. This is some goofy shit, but it taught me a little bit about feng shui as well, of like what you surround yourself really with really does mirror itself in your day-to-day life. That informed my practice significantly. In terms of my subject matter, is treating each artwork like a magic spell. So that changed subject matter significantly. And then finally in 2021, hilariously, just before I discovered crypto art, I ended up finding a place where I could learn magic, you know, like hermetic magic with a K, from this teacher named Jason Louv, who used to write for Vice and was became a one of those very like SSO teachable kind of people, where you have like master class where you have these little modules and you learn different techniques, and then it's really on you to do the damn thing. But what I got really lucky with was that he was a teacher who not only explained like meditation and visionary states, and also coming from various magical writers whose whole thing is look at yourself quite deeply in terms of your positives and negatives and what you want to bring into the world, right? Franz Barden, I believe, was the teacher's name. Initiation Hermetics is the book. He also, this teacher Jason, he also did a really good thing where he was talking about these things in the little modules, but he also left a reading list of what informed what he was talking about. And he was also talking about money, consciousness in regards to money, and also very basic, you know, systems like talking about, let's learn about asset classes, managing assets, right? It's like, let's talk about real estate and stocks and bonds while we also talk about magic, because magic is all well and good for the artist and the visionary state and setting your mind right, but it won't necessarily make you money unless you teach about it. So he's like, well, in that case, let's learn about money so we can have a consciousness about this abstract thing, because it's just like magic, another system. And through that, I gained access to a book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, which is a very classic book, came out in the 1920s. And it has the, you know, pretty classic advice of surround yourself with people that know more than you. Be open to conversation, know what you want, visualize it as completely as you possibly can. Same stuff as The Secret, but from a male perspective. Whatever you see for yourself, you will put yourself on the track to it being accomplished. All good stuff. Very classic self-help business stuff of like, if you can believe it, you can do it, right? And then at the end, chapter 11, it becomes this very insanely erudite, magical treatise of what is genius. And he's like, genius is not something, it's something you're inherently born with, but it requires you to be keyed up to various different states of consciousness through external stimuli. And he lists 10, you know, and I'm sure if you were to experiment with these things, you'd be able to find different ones. But he has everything from sex, love, exposure to death, shared trauma, right? At very low end of the list, but still a big deal, is like consuming various substances, right? Your hallucinogens, marijuana, your alcohols, whatever, even, you know, smoking a cigarette, like, you know, it's like taking these various different upper and downer stimulants, fear, right? So there's this whole list, and he's like, people don't understand that the genius comes from responding as close to the moment as you possibly can and seeing where that takes you. And that really freed me up. And I started putting it into practice, not as quickly as I'd like, but I noticed that when I did, like, I did it maybe like this year even, I had a piece that luckily had people jumping up and down. I'm sure you remember the goose, the golden goose. There was a big generative art thing. It was like a series of circles. Somebody help me here. It's
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know.
You know the one I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I'm forgetting this to my detriment. But there was this big iterative project, and one of the iterations of the thousands of iterations ended up looking like a goose. and people went ape shit over the obviously it's like, what are the chances that of all the random iterations this one produces something that looks like an animal, and particularly a goose and a golden goose and all the associations of that. And it went for something like insane in this bear market of like $5-6 million, somewhere in that ballpark. And it got me so frustrated. And then I realized I'm like, I'm feeling so much, and I'm feeling so much, and I'm talking about it so much. It's like I need to respond to it in art, because if I keep talking about it to my fiance, she's gonna start getting frustrated. And I put it to the canvas in the way that I knew how, which was like, for me now with AI, it's like I take a lot of images from AI and I tend to blend them together and collage them together in my head and through my hand. And I said, okay, I'm going to take this and I'm going to see what comes out and start responding to the AI output of Golden Goose, right? And I ended up coming up with this very beautiful piece, and the response to it was magnificent, just magnificent. I did a similar thing for, I believe it was Terrell Jones, and I forget the other artist, where there was a skull piano painting that came out, which equally had me frustrated from the fact that skull pianos were something I remember from Dali. It's like the piano, it turns into a skull and it's penetrating something else, or it's being penetrated by, it's like, this is classic Salvador Dali, weird sexuality shit. And I was like, these guys are not talking about this. These guys are not talking about this. It's so frustrating. There's already art history for this here. And it's also going for an obscene sum by these people who have never seen, I've never really necessarily had exposure to the artwork that I've seen. And I was like, you know what? I could complain about this, or why don't I create my own skull piano as a response as well? And with those two pieces, I honestly had the first taste of real, of the success that I wasn't expecting, from just responding to the space itself and creating works in my own language and my own style that don't necessarily make a comment on that moment, but allow me to exercise that energy and put it into a canvas or a panel. So for me, like, that was this moments of genius, but it's because I let myself go rather than be frustrated like I would normally be by nonsense, you know? So that those have been those are the pivotal ones on the top of my head in terms of what has like hit me the hardest as far as my creative output goes.
So many points to kind of come into that, but that was so cool. No, but I mean, I've really enjoyed listening to that whole, because I can relate to it on so many different levels, and kind of like beautiful to observe you do the same kind of alchemy of doing the frustration and turning it into something positive, as opposed to like many just kind of succumb to the whole complaining type situation. But from this, I also understand that if we ever meet in person, it would be good for our kind of significant others to be there as well, because they will also have something in common.
Oh my goodness.
In separate rooms.
Yes, dude. Yes.
Just a quick comment, if you don't mind, Nicholas. It's just that my friend ended up bringing Bob Proctor here to Finland when the Secret Book was being published. So I ended up meeting him when they were doing their stage stuff over here. Bob wasn't really, I found him, I couldn't really grasp him that much, but later on in London, I went on the course of Dr. John DeMartini, who's also in that movie, and he ended up being one of the most significant characters I've ever met in my life, and
Wow.
So substantial and life transforming. Those 2 days that I got to spend with him and go through this course called The Breakthrough. And that ended up being like a major turning point in my life. So I kind of like resonated with that as well. And I keep still kind of relearning things from what happened on those 2 days with John. And what I learned, I keep rediscovering the meaning of everything that he kind of infused in me in those 2 days. So if you ever come across Dr. John's work even more, that's probably something that you would resonate with. But most importantly, what I think really shines through from how you speak and what I resonate with is that when I was in my early 20s and I graduated from film school, and I was so disappointed with film school because it really didn't open the doors of perception like I thought it was going to do, finally getting out of the education system per se to be pursuing something that I was so passionate about, becoming a film director. It's only after I graduated from university when I found audiobooks and I discovered Ken Wilber and Wayne Dyer and some of the like fantastic thinkers and some of the self-help realm and all those kinds of things that my mind blew open. And what I've always tried to do is that instead of being inspired by other filmmakers, even though David Fincher and Ridley Scott and many ultimately definitely played a part in my early kind of years, what I realized when I was doing art is that not only did I have a new process, but what I was trying to do with art was taking people much smarter than me, like let's say concepts from Ken Wilber that I was barely starting to grasp what they were, and turning those into visual representations, as opposed to taking something that Dali had done, no matter how impactful he has been in my life, because I can't get rid of those images. And it was so profoundly mind-bending to me when I started seeing those as a kid. But I didn't try to rehash or footnote what Dali had done or any of the others. What I tried to do very consciously was to go outside of the realm of art and start transforming some of those resident things into art so that they would find a new form, and that kind of thing. And I think that is the major problem of the art school, is that they make you learn about the other artists and not about the world and about yourself and how you can do your expression of things. And that's why the art world, for the most part, is a footnote onto footnotes, and why it's such a difficult thing for art critics and art professionals to discover new talent, is that because they simply think so differently than those who are the real avant-garde artists who are transforming something new or something from outside of its realm into something new. So they find it very difficult because they don't have the footnote system in order to understand that this is new necessarily. And even if they do understand it, then they risk their careers of bringing that forward, because it's a very risky thing to say that, you know, this is now the new thing, because you might make a fool out of yourself in the whole thing. And they're not as incentivized to do it as artists are to discover the new thing. But this is what I feel about you as a person, who you are as an artist, of where we really have a sort of similar outlook onto things, is that you went and discovered all those things about yourself and about the world that you find inspiring, and turned that into art, as opposed to, you know, the traditional art school route that leads to those dead ends.
Yep. I think also the art school module is like that form of learning. I don't know how it is now, right? I have no idea. I can say for a fact that the thing that really helped me, that I didn't touch on, was that apprenticeships are really, really critical, I think, and not looked at in the Western world as, I mean, I don't even think they're shown as a possibility, where being in an artist's studio and understanding their life, or like learning from an artist, particularly learning under an artist that you really respect, which I got to do that. I had 6 months of being able to apprentice in Florence under a family of art pastisseurs, you know, copycats. That's what they did. So they literally did note for note, with my teacher being someone that she inherited her father's business. It was her and her husband, and she literally just be able to quick brush strokes from almost eidetic memory, just be able to run through a piece, having seen it once or twice. And it was terrifying. And it was good to be in a room with someone, with another artist like that, and share the experience. And I don't think people have that opportunity, where they look at, where they might have used to, and probably still do, look at schools. It's like, if I want to be an artist, that question still gets asked. It's like, should I go to art school? I remember hearing that asked, particularly in 2021, 22, where like artists would come into, you know, Twitter Spaces, which again, a mind-breaking feature that's still a thing, and Clubhouse before it, and asking, like, should I go to art school? Should I go to art school? Do I need to go to art school? Right? Where I think a lot of art school people, do I need to get my master's if I want to sell art? It's like, whoa, I don't know if you do. I don't know if you do at all. I think you just need to be around other artists and responding to other artists. I think that's a critical thing that we have, that most artists in the world don't have, even most artists in the major metropolitan centers, right? It's like finding your way into a collective can be a very jarring and very intense experience, not to mention being in a collective, in one of those concentrated human groups for any extended period of time, can be incredibly uncomfortable and life-changing. And I think we have that in a weird way in this little little sphere that we're in of crypto art also. Like I think that bears repeating. It's like it's so intimate. This is so much more intimate than it's ever been for any art market. It's incredibly intimate. But yeah, dude, this is a great conversation. I've just been enjoying this conversation with you, man. I'm sorry. I know I get to go on tangents. It just I speak almost as fast as I think sometimes. It gets ahead of me.
Well, that's good. And they're pleasant to listen to and very informative. So we'll just let you go on tangents. So don't worry about it.
Fuck.
Yeah, very much. I mean, I feel like I mean, Nicolas, we've I don't know how many conversations we've had all together. Even though we haven't met in person, I feel like you're a friend, and when we finally kind of meet in the same space, it'll be it'll be kind of like just a nice continuation from where we'd left to. I'm looking forward to that happening. But same with you, Andre. I feel like I've met a new friend in this thing. You know.
Absolutely, likewise, man.
Same. Yeah, that's why I love doing these shows, because it sort of gives you this opportunity to talk to incredible people, right? I mean, within the crypto space, but especially also within the crypto art space, there's so many amazing, talented artists that you can just speak to one-on-one in these sort of discussions, and you can ask them anything about anything, right? Where do you get that in real life? That you can just have sort of hang out like this and pull up amazing artworks and talk about them.
It's precious, man.
Yeah,
it's very precious.
That's kind of ironic because, you know, my background is in philosophy, but I sort of specialize in art and culture. But I never sort of thought that I would actually do something something with it. So it's sort of kind of funny that by coming into economy and then crypto and Bitcoin, and then eventually in NFTs, that I can hang out with, you know, amazing artists and sort of put my theories and my ideas and my education into practice.
I think this is a really cool thing, like the whole format of growing the Bitcoin Live kind of sphere with these panel discussions and you bringing people together who you feel could have great discussions. I think it will elevate the platform, and you know, it's a very necessary service for this whole thing, because most often when I join Twitter Spaces and this kind of thing, I quite honestly feel like a lot of it is just this very blatant self-promotion, which I don't mind that people promote, but the general atmosphere of it should be that people tune in to give to other people from their unique perspective something that would be really beneficial for them to listen to. And it can't be only that of what they can then quickly flip to get riches. And sometimes the quality varies, whether it's worth your time to kind of hang on for whatever significant amount of time that you'd be there with people to try and find the kind of nuggets of what really kind of contribute to your life. So in this particular way, I feel it's unfortunate that our third artist this time wasn't able to join yet. I'm really looking forward to having a conversation.
Loss, man. Patrick's loss.
Yeah, I saw some of his art and I was profoundly like impacted. I was like, yeah, there's some very legit stuff here. And especially that kind of glitch art that at the beginning days was something that definitely wasn't anywhere near his quality or kind of like output. So I was very much looking forward to talking to him as well. And hopefully next time. But this is the kind of thing, like we've been going on for over 2 hours now, and I'm profoundly entertained and learning at the same time. So it's really, really cool.
Yeah, shit. I mean, I'm glad it was just both of us this time around. Honestly, it's been a fucking fantastic conversation. But Patrick added in. I definitely have questions for Patrick too when the time
Patrick
comes.
is also a very deep thinker, and you know, one of the other things that I really enjoy doing these shows is the excitement. You're sort of jumping into something, you have no idea what's coming out at the other end.
Dude, you don't need to walk people home with this. You know, I feel like when artists talk is like, yes, we're all walking each other home, but like we're all kind of like ready to play. I feel like when we're all finally sitting with each other, especially when we resonate, it's like, oh shit, wait a minute, we're on the level. Holy crap! Like we can actually, all right, let's take this up a notch. We're going plat. Like we're gonna do this right now. Ludicrous speed. That's what I like about it. Hilariously
Yeah,
enough,
that's
let me say that is a huge deal in that book, Think and Grow Rich. Not to go back, but it's like when you have, and I think William Burroughs also writes about it with Brian Gysin, his collaborator, is this idea of the Burroughs Gysin one is the third mind. Is you get this extra level of consciousness that comes together when any two human beings meet, but when two or more creatives meet, you do get this massive spike in terms of like what happens immediately after. Like when I go back into the studio and go get to work, I know that some things are gonna happen with the brushwork that are gonna be beyond me. I'm sure it's gonna happen to you too, basically. Like it's gonna happen, and I think it's gonna happen with you too. Like it's just gonna happen immediately, and you'll be on this insane genius high for who knows, it could be 20 minutes and probably more like an hour, a couple of hours, maybe a whole day. Like it's a big deal, and they talk about it in Think and Grow Rich in that 11th chapter is your proximity to people. But if you're creative and you're really resonating, it creates this whole field around you that allows you to do things, write more things, create more things that you would never have normally done if you were just sitting by yourself in a cave.
Yeah,
Definitely.
well, that was also the idea behind doing panel discussions, just bringing together creative spirits. You don't know sometimes, how many, right? Is 3 too many, 4 too many, or not? Maybe it's too few, but just try it and see how it goes. And I loved it. And by the way, the book that Napoleon Hill's book is lying on my brother's night stand.
Fuck yes. It's good, man.
Started reading it.
Yeah, dude. Put that shit next to the Dhammapada. You got a real stew going.
Sounds good. I'll tell them he bought a good book and then I'll read it afterwards.
Fuck yes, man. Stretch to chapter 11. You don't even have to read the whole thing, but the whole thing is pretty golden. I'm serious. It's got some weird shit in the back too. I didn't even tell you the final chapter. It literally is him summoning spirits. I don't make a joke about that when I say that. No one knows that about that book. He talks about stirring yourself into a dream state where you can speak to your heroes, and that it's at the tail end of the book, thank God. Otherwise, who knows who would have taken him seriously. But he talks about how he essentially would go into a bit of meditation before sleep and enter a fugue state in sleep, where these different, I think it was like, who knows, like it was whoever was the hero at the time, 1700s 1800s figures. Let's say it's Benjamin Franklin would come visit him with Abraham Lincoln or something silly, and like would come and he stopped doing it when it fully apparated at the edge of his bed, these figures telling him to like go write another book. And he was like, I got to stop with this practice, where things are starting to become a little more corporeal than he felt comfortable with. It's good shit. Great book.
Okay. You made me really interested because, I'm not really from the self-help books. So each time that I see one, I sort of pass it. But this one got me intrigued. So I'm going to try it.
Amen. This is the power of word of mouth. It's not about engagement. This is about, oh shit, I heard this from somebody and they seemed like they were on the level. Let's just see where this goes.
But I am going to start in chapter 11 or 10, right? So I'll start at the back and work my way back. So guys, I want to thank you both for doing this. And you're, of course, invited to come back anytime for another panel discussion. The idea is sort of to grow this panel, to invite new people. I got at least a couple sort of half finished. So Patrick is ready to join another one soon. But you guys can also come back anytime. Just we'll set it up. It was a pleasure.
Fuck yes, man. Pleasure was mine. This was great. This is a great conversation, man, too. Like shit, this is fantastic.
Really, really enjoyed it. So let's have some more and connect anyway. I might have something interesting for you, Patrick, that I want to talk to you about maybe tomorrow or something. We can maybe do the DM thing on that one if you don't mind.
All right. For Patrick or for me?
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
I have the same problem.
Maybe he's listening.
I've had the same problem. I'm in a house with a cat, 2 dogs, and my fiance, and I've definitely gotten whacked on the back of the head after going like, Penny, Flora, Katie, Adina. So, it happens.
So you're breaking the fourth wall, right? You're speaking directly to Patrick now.
Exactly. If
My
Patrick
brain
listening-
is starting to go on the sort of like waiting to be off side. So my apologies.
Too much information.
Yeah, it's getting late. It's getting late here, and I'm still in the aftermath of the show and the kind of all that stuff. So I'm definitely looking forward to going to bed. But this has been super exhilarating. Like I'm so happy we did this.
Same. Anytime,
Yeah.
guys. Anytime.
Well, and with that positive note, we'll end the show. Everybody, take care and see you soon.
Ciao.
Cool. See you guys. Thanks.